close-up of worn hands gripping a steering wheel. Engine struggling. A child's backpack on the passenger seat. 5 different mechanics. 5 different opinions. All 5 said the same thing. Sir, this transmission is done. It's finished. You need a new one. The repair estimate? Nearly $4,000. Money this dad simply did not have. But he didn't cry. He didn't beg. He went home, opened his laptop, and started watching videos. And what happened next? Not a single one of those dealerships saw coming. There's a kind of strength that doesn't make the news. It doesn't go viral on social media. It doesn't get applause. It just quietly happens in garages and driveways and under cars at 10 o'clock at night, while the kids are asleep and the bills are stacking up and the whole world seems to be pressing down on one man's chest. This is the story of Marcus Webb, a 37-year-old father of 2 from a small town in rural Ohio. A man who worked double shifts at a warehouse. A man who made his kids lunches the night before every single night, without fail. And a man who, when the entire automotive establishment told him his car was dead, decided he simply wasn't going to accept that answer. Stay with me, because this story isn't just about a transmission. It's about what fathers do when the world says no. And it's about the moment 5 very confident professionals were forced to say, "We were wrong." It started on a Tuesday morning in late February. Marcus was running late, which if you have kids, you already know is completely normal and somehow always a crisis. His 9-year-old daughter, Lily, had a science project due. His 6-year-old son, Caleb, needed to be at school by 8 for a field trip bus. Marcus had exactly 22 minutes to drop both of them off and still make it to the warehouse on time. He turned the key. The engine started fine, but when he shifted into reverse, something groaned. Not a normal groan. Not the kind of sound you reassure yourself about and move on. This was the kind of groan that settles somewhere in your stomach. He backed out slowly, shifted to drive. The car lurched, hesitated, then rolled forward with a shudder. "Dad, is the car okay?" Lily asked from the back seat, looking up from her project. "Yep," Marcus said. "Totally fine, sweetheart." He was lying through his teeth. After drop-off, Marcus sat in that parking lot for a long moment. He tried reverse again. Same groan. Worse this time. He called his buddy Derek, a guy who knew a little bit about cars, and described the sound. Derek went quiet for a second. "Man, that sounds like it might be your transmission." 3 words Marcus did not want to hear. That afternoon, Marcus drove the car, slowly, carefully, to the nearest dealership. A friendly service advisor took one look at the mileage, heard the description, plugged in the diagnostic reader. He came back with the confidence of a man delivering a verdict. "Mr. Webb, your transmission is shot. We're talking full replacement. You're looking at $3,800 minimum. Could be closer to $4,500 depending on parts." Marcus blinked. "Is there any chance it's something smaller? A sensor? A solenoid?" The man almost smiled. "Sir, I've been doing this for 18 years. That transmission is finished." Marcus thanked him, drove home slowly. Over the next 2 weeks, because Marcus is not the kind of man who takes one answer as the final word, he visited 4 more shops, a national chain service center, 2 independent mechanics, and 1 transmission specialist that came highly recommended by a coworker. Every single one of them said the same thing. "The transmission is done. You need a new one." One mechanic actually patted him on the shoulder like he was delivering bad news at a hospital. "I know it's not what you want to hear, man, but there's no fixing this. New transmission is your only play." The estimates ranged from $3,200 to $4,800. Marcus was making $21 an hour at the warehouse. He had 2 kids, a rent payment, and exactly $847 in his savings account. A $4,000 repair wasn't just expensive. It was impossible. He did the math 3 times. He thought about financing, but his credit score wasn't going to cooperate. He thought about borrowing from family, but Marcus had that particular kind of pride that makes a man want to solve his own problems. He thought about giving up, selling the car for parts, figuring out buses and carpools and whatever else you do when your only vehicle dies. And then, maybe out of desperation, maybe out of stubbornness, maybe just because he was a dad and dads find a way, he opened YouTube. He typed in, "transmission slipping fix DIY." And his whole life changed. Now, let me be clear about something. Marcus was not a mechanic. He could change his own oil. He could swap a tire. He once replaced a headlight bulb and felt like he'd performed surgery. That was the extent of his automotive knowledge. But here's what Marcus had that those 5 professionals underestimated. He had time. The little slivers of it that single dads manage to carve out after bedtime. He had a notepad and a pen. And he had the kind of focused, nothing-to-lose determination that only comes when your back is completely against the wall. The first video he watched was 47 minutes long. A soft-spoken mechanic in a Michigan garage walked through the entire anatomy of an automatic transmission. How the fluid works, what the solenoids do, why the bands matter, what causes slipping and shuddering, and exactly the symptoms Marcus had been experiencing. Marcus watched it twice. Then he found a forum thread, a deep, detailed conversation between home mechanics, where someone described nearly identical symptoms to what his car was doing. A user named Garage Philosopher 57 had written a response that stopped Marcus cold. Before you replace the whole transmission, pull the pan and check the filter. You'd be surprised how many dead transmissions just needed a fluid change and a clean filter. Mechanics don't want to tell you this because there's no money in a $40 fix. Marcus stared at that sentence for a long time. A $40 fix. He found 3 more videos specific to his car's make and model. He joined an online forum for owners of that exact vehicle. He read through thread after thread of people who had been told their transmissions were gone, only to discover that a clogged filter and old, burned fluid had been mimicking all the symptoms of a failed transmission. He watched a video of a guy, a regular person, not a professional, who had been quoted $3,600 for a new transmission. That guy changed his fluid and filter for $35 in parts. His car ran perfectly for another 80,000 miles. Marcus grabbed his notepad and started writing a list. Tools he'd need, parts to order, steps in the exact right order. He wasn't just watching videos anymore. He was studying. 2 weeks later, on a cold Sunday morning in March, Marcus waited until Lily and Caleb were still asleep. He made himself a cup of coffee. Thick, strong, no sugar. He put on a worn hoodie, grabbed his toolbox, and he went out to the driveway. The first challenge was confidence. Not skill, confidence. Because no matter how many videos you watched, there's a moment when you're lying on cold concrete, looking up at something you've never touched before, and a voice in your head says, "You're going to make this worse." Marcus heard that voice. He acknowledged it. And then he kept working. He carefully loosened the transmission pan bolts, just as the video had instructed, leaving the back ones slightly tighter so the fluid would drain at an angle instead of dumping all over him at once. When the pan came loose, he wasn't ready for what he saw. The fluid was almost black. Not dark red the way healthy transmission fluid should look. Black, thick, burnt smelling. The filter, which should have been a light beige color, was completely clogged with debris and sludge. It looked like it hadn't been changed in years. Maybe ever. Marcus took a photo. Then he took another one. He held up the old filter next to the brand new one he'd ordered. $18 from an auto parts website. And the difference was unmistakable. He sat there on the driveway for a moment, just thinking. 5 mechanics, 5 professionals. Not one of them suggested this. He cleaned the pan thoroughly with brake cleaner, installed the new gasket, seated the fresh filter, torqued every bolt to spec. He'd looked up the exact torque values 3 separate times to be sure. Then he refilled the transmission with the correct fluid, the specific type his car required, because Marcus had done enough research to know that using the wrong fluid could cause more problems. The whole process took him about 3 hours. His coffee went cold. He didn't care. When he finally stood up, his back ached. His knuckles were scraped. There was transmission fluid on his hoodie that was never coming out. He stood there in the driveway, looking at the car. This was the moment of truth. He'd done everything right. He was almost certain. But almost certain and completely certain are 2 very different things when you're a dad who depends on this car to get his kids to school and himself to work. He opened the driver's door, sat down, put the key in, and started the engine. He let it idle for 2 minutes. Just like the video said, let the fresh fluid circulate. Let the system pressurize. Then, slowly, deliberately, he shifted into reverse. No groan. Silence. Clean, smooth silence. He backed down the driveway, shifted to drive. The car moved forward. No shudder. No lurch. No hesitation. Just smooth, steady acceleration. He drove around the block once, then twice. Then he pulled back into the driveway, put the car in park, and sat there for a long moment. He didn't cheer. He didn't call anyone. He just sat in that quiet car on that quiet Sunday morning and let out a long, slow breath. The kind of breath that carries 3 weeks of stress with it. The total cost of what he'd just done, $31.54. Parts. No labor. No $4,000 estimate. No new transmission. $31.54. When Lily came downstairs that morning, she found her dad making pancakes. She didn't know about the 3 weeks of research. She didn't know about the 5 dealerships. She didn't know that her dad had spent his Sunday morning lying on cold concrete to make sure she'd have a ride to school on Monday. She just said, "Pancakes. Is the car okay now, Dad?" And Marcus smiled. "Yeah, baby girl. The car's fine." Marcus told a few people at work. His buddy Derek couldn't believe it. His coworker Janine, who was dealing with her own car trouble, asked him to walk her through what he'd done. And then someone said what always gets said in these moments. "You should put this on YouTube." Marcus laughed it off. But a few nights later, he set up his old phone on a stack of books, turned on the flashlight, and recorded a 14-minute video in his driveway. No script. No fancy editing. Just a tired dad in a worn hoodie explaining exactly what he'd done, why he'd done it, and what it had cost him. He titled it something simple. "They said my transmission was dead. I fixed it for $31. He posted it at 11:47 p.m. and went to bed. When he woke up, it had 4,000 views. By the end of the week, 180,000. The comments were overwhelming. "This video just saved my family's car. I was about to spend $3,500. Did this exact thing. Car runs perfect. Thank you. Sir, you have no idea how much this helped us. We're a single-income family, and you literally saved us." Marcus read every single comment in those first few days. Not because he was chasing fame, but because, as he later said in a follow-up video, he'd been terrified he was the only person in this situation, facing a repair he couldn't afford, being told something was hopeless when maybe it wasn't, and discovering that there were hundreds of thousands of people out there just like him. Parents, working people, people who just needed someone to say, "Don't give up yet. Do your homework. You might be able to fix this yourself." Now, and this is important, I want to be fair here. Not every mechanic who quoted Marcus was being dishonest. Some of them genuinely didn't examine the car closely enough. a quick diagnostic scan showed transmission error codes and the logical conclusion, especially on a higher mileage vehicle, is that the unit needs replacement. It's a fast conclusion. It's often the right conclusion, but it's not always the right conclusion. The problem, Marcus later learned, is that a transmission fluid and filter service is inexpensive. In a busy shop with labor rates and overhead, there's not much incentive to start with the smallest, cheapest possible fix. A full replacement is what makes business sense. What Marcus discovered, and what those forum posts had told him, is that clogged filters and degraded fluid can mimic catastrophic transmission failure almost perfectly. Same symptoms, completely different cause, completely different solution. The difference between a $31 fix and a $4,000 fix. And the only reason Marcus found it? He couldn't afford not to look. And here's where I want to stop for just a second and ask you, what would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have trusted all 5 mechanics and scraped together the money somehow? Or would you have done what Marcus did, pushed back, done the research, and tried to find another way? Let us know in the comments below. Seriously, we read every single one. And stay with me, because the story isn't quite over yet. There's one more moment you need to hear. 6 months after that Sunday morning in the driveway, Marcus's car had nearly 20,000 new miles on it. No transmission issues. No slipping. No shuddering. No groaning. Just a reliable working vehicle. The one his kids rode to school in every morning. The one he drove to the warehouse every day. He'd also quietly, without making a big deal of it, started doing fluid and filter checks for 3 of his neighbors. Single moms on his street who didn't have the time or knowledge to deal with it themselves. He didn't charge them. "Marcus, you have to let me pay you something," one of them said. He shook his head. "Just buy your kids something nice." There's a version of this story where Marcus Webb went to that first dealership, heard the number, and found a way to pay it. Where he maxed out a credit card or borrowed money he couldn't afford to repay. Where the transmission got replaced and life went on and nobody ever heard his name. That version of the story exists. But it's not this one. In this one, a single dad running on stubbornness and YouTube tutorials and the sheer refusal to be defeated, laid down on cold concrete on a Sunday morning, got his knuckles scraped, spent $31, and proved 5 dealerships wrong. Not because he was a mechanic, not because he had special knowledge or special tools, but because he loved his kids enough to do the work. And because he understood something that too many people forget when life gets hard. The answer you've been given is not always the only answer there is. Sometimes you have to be willing to look for it yourself. Marcus Webb is not famous. He still works his double shifts at the warehouse. He still makes his kids lunches the night before every single night. His YouTube channel has modest numbers. Nothing viral, nothing explosive. But the comments keep coming in. Families who said his videos saved them hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. People who were told their car was hopeless, who tried the cheap fix first and found out it worked. Every one of those comments, Marcus says, feels like a small victory. Not for him, for the version of himself 3 years ago, sitting at that kitchen table, staring at a $4,000 estimate, wondering how in the world he was going to take care of his kids. He'd want that version of himself to know, you're going to figure it out. Not because someone rescues you, but because you refuse to stop looking for a way. That's the kind of dad Marcus Webb is. And honestly, that's the kind of story we need more of. If Marcus's story hit you the way it hit us, drop a comment below. Tell us what you would have done. Tell us if you've ever been in a situation where everyone said it was impossible, and you found a way anyway. We read every single comment, every one. If you're new here, welcome to Dad Life Stories. We tell real stories about real fathers doing extraordinary things in ordinary circumstances. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss one. If this video helped you or made you feel something, please share it. Text it to a friend. Post it somewhere. You never know who needs to hear that the impossible might just be possible with a little stubbornness and a lot of love. And if you like this one, hit that like button so YouTube knows to show it to more people who need it. We'll see you in the next story. Take care of your families. And never let anyone tell you something is finished until you've looked for yourself.